At approximately 2:27 this morning, San Francisco police officers were dispatched to the residence of Speaker Nancy Pelosi regarding an A-priority well-being check. When the officers arrived on scene, they encountered an adult male and Mr. Pelosi's husband, Paul. Our officers observed Mr. Pelosi and the suspect both holding a hammer. The suspect pulled the hammer away from Mr. Pelosi and violently assaulted him with it.
So yes, the husband of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Paul Pelosi, was attacked inside of his home by a man who apparently broke in there. The police were able to make it there before the violence actually began, but at that point it had already become clear that there was potentially a motive beyond just violent crime or a desire to burglarize the place. We're gonna go to another clip where they're gonna make clear how, for Paul Pelosi, he knew almost immediately what this was about.
I've just been told by a source who was briefed on the attack that the assailant who attacked Paul Pelosi was actually in search for the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. That before the assault occurred, in other words, before he attacked Pelosi, the intruder confronted the Speaker's husband in their home and was shouting, quote, "Where is Nancy? Where is Nancy?"
So the entire thing is obviously horrifying. To be Paul Pelosi and know that this individual wants to attack or potentially kill your wife is almost unimaginable. To then be attacked by this individual wielding a hammer, even worse. Now, thankfully, he did eventually get taken to a hospital. He's been treated for bruising, severe swelling, and other injuries after being severely beaten about both the head and body. There had been reports earlier today about some sort of actual brain surgery. Perhaps that's encapsulated in the details we've already provided for you. The assailant has been identified, David DePape, a 42-year-old, and we've been told that they'll be booked at San Francisco County Jail on a number of charges, including attempted homicide, assault with a deadly weapon, elder abuse, verbal, and several other additional felonies. The man apparently broke into the house through the back door, something like that. Nancy Pelosi was not at the residence. Had she been, there would have been additional security. But that said, the man was successful in at least doing some harm to the Pelosi family. And more information about this individual has come out in the hours since then, and we will get to that. But first, let's respond to the fact that this attack happened at all.
Yeah, so a couple of other small details in the big point. So it happened at 2:30 in the morning. Guys, this is as scary as it gets. Somebody breaks into your house at 2:30 in the morning and they wind up smashing your head in with a hammer. And so it's a disastrous story. And then, by the way, there's a weird part of the story where the cops are already there and they saw him attacking Paul Pelosi with a hammer. I kept thinking, like, get in there, let's go. I mean, I don't know how they saw it, but couldn't stop it in time for the guy to grab the hammer, etc. But I'm not trying to blame the cops. The main issue here is the assailant, right? So we have 1,000 policy issues with Nancy Pelosi, but that has nothing to do with any of this because this is madness, sheer goddamn madness. And so what number one thing when I saw the story in the morning I thought is it just a random break-in, which is already a huge problem in California, right? Or is it political? And where's Nancy? Where's Nancy? He's gonna tie up the husband until he gets what he wants in terms of attacking Nancy Pelosi instead. It's obviously definitely specific. It's not like he wandered into any random house. He knew exactly where he was. And it's obviously political. Well, I mean, we've been warning you about political violence 1,000 times over, and here we are, because all you gotta do is egg on the most unstable people on your side. He's a massive right winger, we're gonna get to that later in the program, but it was clearly an attack egged on by a guy's politics, and this is what vigilante violence looks like, and honestly, this is what fascism looks like.
Yeah, here's the thing. Cenk already covered the point that it's bad to hurt people, but there's another element here, which this is not an effective approach to get something done, I don't think. So you should be mad at systems, not individual people, because what would happen if he were to actually get in there and do whatever he wanted to do to Nancy Pelosi? The system that's in place would suggest someone just like Nancy Pelosi would then take public office. And that's why when it comes to political change, it doesn't make sense to go and try and kill individuals who are people in power. Like if your problem is Nancy Pelosi and people like her getting into office, no matter what side you're on, this is not effective because the way the Democratic establishment is set up and the way politics are set up in our country and the lobbying in San Francisco, someone just like Nancy would end up getting into political office anyway.
So that's 100% true, and we say on air all the time, and I'll say it in every story that it involves politics and violence. Our side never does violence. If you do, you're by definition not on our side. No progressive thinks, oh, let me go kill someone or hurt someone because I think that's a smart strategy. It's the opposite of what progressives think. We're the good guys that are trying to bring change in a political way, etc. So that all that stuff is, I think, super obvious, but we emphasize it every time anyway, in case it isn't obvious. Okay, so, and the reason for that is, to Jessica's point, her point is so clearly true, but the problem for people that don't do what we do and that instead egg people on is some people in your audience are Nobel laureates, maybe, certainly in our audience, and some of them are incredibly smart and well-educated, etc. But some folks in anybody's audience, let alone if you're a right-winger, right, are not so bright. And you think they're doing strategy, how is the best way to effectuate change? Well, I've written a thesis on it. And if they do write a thesis, it's usually called a manifesto. And it's like got like the craziest things you've ever seen in your life, right? So these are not rational thinkers. That's why you have to be careful on air and not use violent rhetoric when you're talking about politics. Hey, every once in a while you go, hey, we're gonna kick the Republican ass, we're gonna bury the Democrats, etc. in a political context. I'm not nitpicking on that. We're not, but saying like these people are dangerous and you should do something about it. There's many examples. Again, we'll get to it in a second, a little bit later in the show. But if you go down that path, you're triggering people who are already unstable. And this guy's history is clearly unstable.
Yes.
So he's got family members who are like, oh, I don't know about this guy. He had somebody that he was in the same room with for a little while. I think, what was he, babysitting or something for them? Not babysitting, that's a disaster. But somehow that he was working for them. And she said, I cut off the relationship because it was super obvious that he was not only unstable, but I was worried he was dangerous.
Yeah.
That those people also exist out there. So you have to be careful what you say because of that context.
Exactly, yeah. And what you said about, by definition, this person wouldn't be a progressive. I want to go one step beyond that because the other side will say the same thing when there is an act of violence. They'll say this person clearly wasn't a conservative then. The distinction is not just saying it, it's what you've been saying. So when Jesse Waters multiple times this year jokes about using arson as a solution to the unhoused, you don't then get to turn around and say that it was a joke and the person who tries to burn down a house to kill unhoused people clearly wasn't a conservative. When you're literally making jokes about hitting Nancy Pelosi with a gavel, I don't know, like maybe stop using the violent rhetoric if you eventually want to be able to hide behind this person being no true Scotsman,
And to that point, John, there's polling. One poll said 28% of Republicans believe that it might be time for violence.
Yeah.
So it's not subtle. It's not like around the edges. They're saying, and 28% is not, oh, that's 2.5 people. Oh my God, that's 200 people. 28% of Republicans is millions and millions of people. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's a giant number. This guy happens to be anti-Semitic. And he, all that talk of the drinking the blood of the children and stuff. That's an old blood libel, and that's a QAnon talking point. What percentage of the country believes in QAnon? 15%. That's 45 million Americans that believe that Democratic leaders like Nancy Pelosi are drinking the blood of children.
Yeah.
If you genuinely believe that, what wouldn't you do? And meanwhile, the right wing eggs him on and eggs him on. Oh, good point. Donald Trump retweeted QAnon 133 times recently?
Yeah.
So he's egging people on, oh yeah, they might be drinking the blood. They might be murdering and molesting the children. And implicit in all of those over the top attacks in the context of politics is, aren't you gonna do something about it?
Yeah.
And so, and here it is someone who decided to do something about it.
Well, why don't we get into what this guy apparently believes? Following an act of political violence, you should always be hesitant to believe narratives about who the person was, what their motivation was. Almost every single time there's an attack, some social media thing comes out, and a significant percentage of the time, it turns out not to have been from the person that actually committed the attack. So always grain of salt and wait until we can be sure. That said, in the case of the attack on Paul Pelosi, we now believe we have a pretty good idea of who this person was and what he believed. So this individual posted memes and conspiracy theories on Facebook about every single right-wing conspiracy, effectively. COVID-19 vaccines, the 2020 election, the January 6th attack. He was posting links to videos by Mike Lindell falsely alleging that the 2020 election was stolen. He was posting transphobic images and linked to websites claiming that the COVID-19 vaccine would kill you. He was posting really clickbaity titles about the January 6th committee, as well as global elites' plan to take control of your money. Gee, I wonder what sort of global elites he's talking about there. There's QAnon stuff all throughout his writing. He posts content about the Great Reset, which I think is mostly an Alex Jones thing. It's the idea that global elites are using coronavirus to totally remake the world order, and that white people are being replaced by insert a group you don't like. None of these posts, by the way, specifically mention Nancy Pelosi. So the connection wasn't super clear there, except in his mind, since he did target her. There's also a lot of sort of like culturally adjacent right-wing stuff. The guy loved to post about movies, and you'll be shocked to find out he was not a big fan of diversity in movies, didn't like female characters and people of color. So anyway, he believed pretty much everything. Any conspiracy theory someone put on 4chan or made a video about on Rumble, this guy was going to believe it. And that effectively became his worldview. Communist voodoo science, the woke are racists with a guilty conscience, things about feminism and everything. Really, it's everything, it's all of it.
So there's tons of lies in all aspects of media, and we try to knock down all those here at TYT. So mainstream media will do lies about politicians saying that no, for example, millions of dollars in donations don't affect them at all. Joe Manchin will get tons of money from oil companies, and they say that does not affect his vote at all. Instead, he's a moderate from West Virginia, and he's trying to represent the moderate positions of the oil-loving West Virginians. Okay, that's an absurd lie, and it's dangerous to democracy and to our system, but it's not dangerous to any particular individual, okay? And then we will counter with, no, we think the millions of dollars does affect them, right? But we're having a policy conversation, we're having a systems conversation. Now, on the other hand, there is the right wing, and the right wing says all of those things. Oh, January 6th, you know what happened? They tried to steal the election from Donald Trump. They took your democracy away. Aren't you gonna do something about it? Okay, and by the way, that was pre-January 6th, and they did do something about it. January 6th, they attacked the Capitol, a couple of cops died. It was a mess, and one of the protesters, the rioters died, right? And Steve Bannon said, "Oh, something big is coming," and Trump said it's gonna be wild, and they egged them all on, and then they actually did do violence. And then you have the coronavirus stuff. Oh, the global elites are controlling everything. And people are gonna die. And then you got QAnon. They're drinking the blood of children. They're killing the children. They're molesting the children. Aren't you gonna do something about it? Right? It gets people super angry. And now I'm gonna say something that all the right wing will find deeply offensive, and I don't care at all, okay? Look, these are con men. And what do con men look for? They look for the most gullible people in society. So they know that they're targeting people that are not the brightest bulbs. And they're like, oh, let's get them to believe that these guys that Tom Hanks and Dr. Fauci and Nancy Pelosi are working with Satan to
Chrissy Teigen.
To drink the brain juice of people, right? Now, no one actually believes that, right? Among the leaders, right? This Tucker Carlson said it, they don't actually believe that. Tucker Carlson will egg you on. Donald Trump will repost QAnon stuff endlessly on his platform. But Mike Flynn, said they all egged him on. Oh, you gotta do something, you gotta do something. I mentioned a little while earlier in the show, 28% of Republicans in a poll said it might be time for violence. I saw another poll where 41% said, hey, sometimes you might have to take things into your own hands. So when this guy took things into his own hands, he resorted to violence. He believed every lunatic right-wing conspiracy theory. Unfortunately, he also believed in the fake left. And for the right-wingers now, this is exactly why the fake left is so dangerous. We're gonna get to them in a second. But they're like, what? He believed in Tulsi Gabbard? Well, that means the left did it. Oh, that's why we've been calling them the fake left, because they're not left at all. They're the same exact people as the right wing. That's why this guy loved them. We'll come back to that in a second. Jessica.
Yeah, what I see going on in mainstream media is like if I were to tap Jinx, you remember you used to do this on the playground, like tap Jinx left shoulder and he turns and thinks John has just tapped him, but it was really me. That's literally what mainstream media is doing by telling you who the bad guys are. They're pointing to QAnon, they're pointing to global elites, they're pointing to cancel culture and people actually fighting for LGBTQ rights and for people to be able to observe more freedoms in this country. And they're telling you to be mad at all of those things when the real people that are taking away our freedoms are those right-wing leaders and the corporations that are exploiting our labor every day. These people are angry because they're not doing well in this country. A lot of them happen to be also extremely racist and extremely misogynistic. That's a huge faction of this group. But some of them are just confused working class people that feel they're not doing well in this country, and that fear is weaponized by this misinformation. And I know I said earlier, be mad at systems and not people. These people have been tricked to be mad at the absolute wrong systems. And the people that are collecting a paycheck in mainstream media are dangerous. They're literally destroying our country for a paycheck, taking advantage of people who are the product of a public education system that has been defunded and a curriculum that's been manipulated to meet the needs of the people in power in the United States. And the consequence is stuff exactly like this.
Yeah, and to that point, on the show, not only do we say all the time, hey guys, don't ever do anything physical, right? But on top of that, we layer in, look, if it's not Joe Manchin, he's just gonna get someone exactly like Joe Manchin. So the person, that's why we say it's not the person, it's the system. So if you think you got rid of Manchin and Sinema, that the Democrats would have passed everything, and unfortunately, yeah, that's mainstream media lies about that and says, oh yeah, it was just them, right? Then the Democrats would have done everything they promised. That's a total lie. The Democrats wouldn't have done any of that. They would have found two people just like Manchin and Sinema. You get mad at the mainstream media that lies about things, and they've lied about me in specific. But really, what difference does it make if it was that reporter or a different reporter? The whole point of that system, mainstream media, is to get you to believe that corporate rule is great, right? And the point of right-wing media is to get you to be really angry and to tell you that a small group of people are running things, and if you just took care of them, then everything would be great, right? And that is even more dangerous.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.